Yeah, I can. It's I guess given it's a little unusual that we've actually announced the 11 as we're announcing the squad. So chatting with Ron and Pat this morning, they've given the all clear for me to let you know that they've decided that Steve Smith will be opening the batting and Cameron Green will come into the number 4 position, which is fantastic. Regard in which we hold Cameron, and I think the way the rest of that batting order is functioning left us feeling like that we have someone who we think is pretty talented, who potentially was going to find it hard to get any Test cricket in the next period, 12 months or so. So, trying to work out a way and I don't think that's going to be particularly beneficial for Greeny, and I think we can get a lot of benefits out of him playing. So, working through some of the solutions to that and how he could potentially slot in and where that could be. Steve's obviously motivated and energised and keen to do it. There were plenty within the team who were pretty keen to go on record and say that they weren't keen to do it. So it was refreshing that Steve had come forward and said he wanted it, and it was something that we'd been chatting about in the background as a selection panel with the coaches as well, and with Pat, just around who, if you were going to rejig it, what some of the potential options were.
George, is this an experiment or is this something that you're looking at being set for the long term?
Tongue in cheek, I could say now that everything's an experiment, isn't it?
There's some pretty good experiments.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's been part of the discussions, I believe, with Steve, that he's keen for this to be a significant chapter in his career. As far as the panel goes, I mean, I think we've been pretty consistent in saying that we don't look too far ahead. We've obviously got these 2 Test matches against the West Indies. We go to New Zealand, different conditions, different challenge. We'll have more information then. We've clearly got a big gap of Test cricket then, and then India over the summer. But for all intents and purposes, no, this is where Steve wants to stay.
So it's not an experiment.
No, well, it's not as far as any change or any putting any player in. No, it's not.
Is there any issue between any members of the squad and Bangers that I guess exclude him from selection?
No, I'm glad you asked that, because I wanted to touch on it. It's categorically no, and I've shared this with Cameron on a number of occasions. It has never at any stage been discussed from the panel's perspective. It's purely a cricketing decision. There is not a member of the team that would have an issue with Cam playing. We certainly don't have an issue with it. I think a lot of people tend to forget the fact that Cam's actually played Test cricket since returning from the ban. It was a long time ago. We've all moved well past that. I'd be disappointed if that's why, if people were looking to that as a reason. And all I can do is reiterate to you and to Cam that's not the case. Never has been and never will be. It's an interesting one, because I feel like over the last couple of weeks I've heard the line specialist opener more than I've ever heard it in my life. And I think if you go back historically and look at the last 30, 35 Australian openers, I reckon over 50% of them actually weren't openers or didn't start as openers. So I don't know what comes first, the specialist bit or the opportunity to perform. And it probably says to me that your best batters are generally your best batters, and are your best problem solvers, and technically your most proficient as well, and they find a way to adapt. But I think ultimately the results will be the judge of it, but the opportunity will decide whether we end up talking about Steve Smith as someone who has the admiration and respect as some of those former Australian openers who we look upon as openers and can't remember batting anywhere else, but actually started their careers in different positions as well. And Usman's a great example at the other end of the wicket to him, who actually still bats at 4 for Queensland.